Welcome to the pod focusing on the aftermath and recovery from the devastating Palisades fires of January 2025. Journalist Joel Pollack, entrepreneur Oren Ezra, and technology expert Ron Goldschmidt serve up to the moment vital news and information, discuss the ongoing recovery efforts, and introduce us to the individuals and trades who are playing key roles in rebuilding our cherished communities. We're diving into the deep end and learning quickly how we can move forward together. We know the pain because we're living real-time news, stories, resources, and insights on the ongoing recovery effort. Buckle up. We're three homeless guys.
Welcome to Three Homeless Guys, the podcast about the Palisades fire and the rebuilding effort. I'm journalist Joel Pollack here with entrepreneur Oren Ezra and technology expert Ron Goldschmidt. And we are very pleased to be joined this evening by residents of the Tahitian Terrace, which is one of the mobile home areas near Pacific Coast Highway in Pacific Palisades that was destroyed by the fire. We're here with Abby Waldorf and Chris Russo, and we'll get into their story in a minute. But first, let's just allow them to say hello briefly before we start in on the news.
Thank you so much for having us on your podcast. We're really excited to have a conversation with fellow Palisadians and talk shop. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, Abby, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself very quickly? That was Chris.
Sure, yes. Abby Waldorf, excited to be here. Was a resident of Tahitian Terrace for the past 20 years. My dad moved there in 2003 or 2004, and my mom actually moved in down the street from him in 2013. So very excited to talk about a community that is very near and dear to my family with you all today.
All right, so we're going to focus on this community for a number of reasons. And Abby and Chris met me at the January 7th protest, the They Let Us Burn protest in the middle of Pacific Palisades. And Abby and Chris told me that their story really hadn't been told and they'd had very little help from anybody. And that was very striking to me. So we'll tell that story in a moment after we do a quick roundup of the news. I'm going to kick it off, first of all, with the news that EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin is going to be visiting Pacific Palisades together with Small Business Administration Chief Kelly Loeffler. And the two of them are coming to Pacific Palisades to kick off the permitting intervention that the Trump administration is doing. And as we're recording this, it's the day before the visit. We don't know that much about what they're going to be doing and even where they're going to be going. So it's going to unfold as the day progresses. But we'll know a little bit more about what the Trump administration wants to do to overhaul permitting and to allow people to self-certify that they've met all the permitting obligations to speed things up. At the California Post, we published an op-ed from Lee Zeldin and Kelly Loeffler saying they want to move at what they call Trump speed, which means speeding everything up, the way they sped up the removal of hazardous waste and the Army Corps of Engineers. So we'll see what that means, and they'll be meeting with local residents. And so by the time you listen to this podcast, that may be about to happen or may have already happened. But one thing I want to just draw attention to is I do know that they're going to be touring a bit of the places in Pacific Palisades where you can see the view. And of course, one of the great views from the bluffs looking, I suppose, westward is over Tahitian Terrace. They will look right over the area that Abby and Chris are from. So they will see the destruction themselves and understand exactly what it meant. A little bit of personal news. So I am still working on my house and my repairs. Thankfully, they've started, which is good. I made a mistake, and I'm trying to fix it. And the mistake I made was removing the soil. Not that that's a mistake, but most insurance policies don't cover soil removal. So I've got to figure this out because the Army Corps of Engineers definitely removes people's soil for the reason that it's contaminated. And so my soil was definitely contaminated. We had testing done. And so we're trying to have that conversation now. I do think it's absolutely necessary. I mean, I can't have my kids playing on soil inundated with lead. And actually the testing company said the results were so bad, so severe, that they removed not just a 3-inch removal, but a 6-inch removal. So there was a lot of contamination on my lot, but I need to make sure that I have the insurance coverage to pay for that. So, a word to the wise: before you remove the soil, if you're doing it on your own, make sure you have the right coverage. And I have to just say, after all the conversations we had about debris on this program, you'd think I would have known better, but it seemed like a logical extension to me of the estimate that I had for remediating the interior of the house. And I think we just got our wires crossed when I was talking to the contractor. So I'm trying to sort that mess out. But it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back when it comes to recovery in this fire situation. But anyway, that's my news. Other than that, the first week of the California Post is in the bag, went very well. And we'll talk about that another time after we get into this really important story. But anyway, Ron and Oren, I don't know which one of you guys wants to go first, but we'd love to hear your news as well.
I mean, a couple of things that are on my radar. One thing is the mayoral race, obviously with Spencer throwing his hat in. And now it appears that maybe Lindsay Horvath is preparing for a run, at least some indication that show that she's going to throw her hat in the ring, including some infighting with Karen Bass. From my perspective, like anybody that's going to be able to kind of like take away votes from Karen Bass, it would be nice to have in the race. Karen Bass still very solidly leading on prediction markets and polls. And I think, Spencer is like going to have a very good race as well to like put up a fight. But right now she's leading. And I think like Lindsay coming in, if she does, would probably take away some votes from Karen Bass. And I think that's a good thing. I don't know what you think about that, guys. But the other thing is I just want to point out is that this week is a very, very important week in terms of the litigation that's going on with the case. And what's happening this week is that they're discussing the immunity and demurrer. And that's happening on Thursday, I believe. And this is probably the most important thing that has happened so far in the ongoing pending litigation from all the big law firms. And what's happening is that the judge is really going to decide on whether the state has government immunity or it's going to dismiss the basically the petition to have the government involved in this. And obviously the government immunity is kind of like an escape hatch for some of the claims for the state, and obviously they're hoping that this is going to be held up. Obviously, all of the defendants are hoping that this gets through, and so we can go after the state for its various actions or misactions during the fire. So very important week this week in the litigation. Oren?
So yeah, I'm actually it's been a crazy week. Like we had our podcast. We had two podcasts last week, and the last one we talked with Steve Hilton, and we talked a lot about the fraud that's happening in California, and the cost of living in California, and how much money is being spent on so many things with ridiculous things. I just heard that there is like an organization that got $232 million in order to help homeless to rehabilitate after being, in the streets. And guess how many homeless they were able to help? 22. So I think that the fact that Nick Shirley is here this week, and the fact that there is more and more fraud that is going to be revealed in California is great. I think that we have an amazing state, and me as a business owner, knowing how much taxes I'm paying, understanding that it's becoming so ridiculous that. Like even people that are making over $100,000 are like they decide not to stay in this state, and the people that are making a lot of money are leaving the state, and taxes are going up. And it was wow, great in California. Everybody is driving electric cars, and now they're talking about like the mileage taxation. So I really don't understand what's happening here. What's like Newsom is trying to do. if he's trying to run for president, is he trying to do, and Joel, I would love to hear your opinion about it, is he trying to do every single thing horrible and like show that he's like he ran California in the most horrible way and now give him the whole state to run? Like, is there somebody that can come and tell me, hey, and I would love actually if somebody's listening to us and want to come on the podcast, I would love to hear somebody that will tell me, hey, you know what, you're looking at on it totally wrong. Here is the amazing things that Newsom did over here in California, and this is why we think because of these actions, not because of his talk, okay? If somebody want to come over and tell us because of his action, what are the amazing things that he did to California, that's why he should run for president. That's why he should stay the governor. That's why we elected him again. So, again, I don't know, Ron, Joel, I don't know if you have
Well,
anything to...
I'll give you my quick perspective on that. I think that when voters look at candidates for president, and this is true of voters in both parties, especially when that party has been out of power. So when you're talking about a primary voter, whether on Republican side or Democratic side, if their party has been out of power for a long time or has suffered a defeat that was considered very major, like the Democrats suffered last year or now 2 years ago in 2024, what voters tend to look for is someone who fights very hard. That was the reason Trump did so well in 2015, 2016, was that Republicans had what they thought was a perfect candidate on paper with Mitt Romney, perfect resume. He had been a governor, he ran the Olympics. He had all these accomplishments that you talk about, Oren. I mean, Mitt Romney could say, I've done this, I've done that, I've done everything. Grandchildren, beautiful family, been overseas, spoke a lot of languages, everything he had done. And he still lost. And so Republicans in the next election threw out the idea that they needed someone who had achievements, and they went for someone who could fight. And that was the reason Trump rose to the top of the field. I mean, there were other reasons as well, policy reasons, some other things. But Trump had a special set of skills, and he also showed people that he could fight. And what Newsom is doing is gambling on the idea that Democrats are in a similar mood, because they really weren't supposed to lose to Trump in their imagination. And I think that Newsom is connecting with at least some Democratic voters who want a fighter. And I just know this because I've talked to people in our state who don't think he's done a great job necessarily, although some would cite certain things, but they aren't looking at what his achievements are for the state. They're looking at how well he trolls President Trump, or how many hits he gets on social media, how much excitement he's getting with his gimmicks and things like that, because people want a fighter. Now, that doesn't mean the rest of the Democratic presidential field is going to roll over and let him do whatever he wants. I mean, people will attack his record, or they'll say he hasn't done enough or whatever. There are going to be other candidates, but he has definitely seized the spotlight. And you're right, not by pointing to what he's done in California, but by attacking President Trump. So it's a strategic choice. I mean, you can have a debate about what he's done or hasn't done, but I would just say, if you want to put it in perspective, it's a strategic political choice, and candidates on both sides in both parties do this when their party's out of power. I can tell you that on paper, the best candidate in 2016 was Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. He had done a very good job in Wisconsin over 2 terms, and in the end, nobody cared. Nobody cared. So anyway, let's jump in here to this topic, very important. We like to tell the bigger picture stories by talking about individual stories. And Abby and Chris have a video about Tahitian Terrace, the mobile home park at the base of the bluffs in Pacific Palisades. And it's a short video, a couple minutes long, and it tells their story in the fire. And I've also got a video to share later, but let's watch their video first.
When Cheryl called 911, they said, "Where are you?" And we said, "The mobile home park." And they said, "Well, you're not our priority."
We got a fire up in the Palisades Highland, which is not more than a mile away.
I was looking at the fire coming over the hill going, how the hell is this going to play out?
Shit! Oh, shit! It's just on the other side of the park next door. Michael, let's go! Come on! Oh, my God! Come on! We're all in a straight line.
Tonight, panic in the Pacific Palisades.
We made it here to the Pacific Coast Highway. It is extremely windy.
This is all that's left of Tahitian Terrace. There's not a single home that stands in there. It's all gone. It is all gone.
We are one of the last affordable housing communities on the coast of California.
We have an ownership group that doesn't communicate. Your whole history of your life just melted. You know, you want some answers, just anything.
They own land that 158 families live on. Over 400 people lived here. We're shocked and really scared.
I can't speak enough about the magical, wonderful people that live here.
We have senior citizens. We had a woman just turned 100. We have people that are living off a teacher's pension. We have families, young kids. It's a whole hodgepodge of different people.
This became like our chosen family.
It's a little community, and everybody takes care of everybody else.
There's so many people's lives just gone.
See your life in shambles and ashes is pretty hard.
This is home for us, so let us know when we can rebuild. We'll be here to make it happen.
You're almost speechless because you can't believe that this is what it's come to.
We all just want to come home. That's all we want.
We just don't want to be left in the dark.
We're in a rock and a hard place.
Don't forget us.
Of course, thousands of people lost their homes. Many had damage to their homes like me, but the residents of the mobile home areas are in a much more difficult position. Let me start with you, Chris. Tell us a little bit about your experience of the fire, and then Abby, talk about your experience, and we can jump into the rest of the discussion.
Sure. So I had been looking for a new place to live on the west side for over a year, and I'm a cyclist. I've cycled past these parks hundreds of times to Malibu, and I really wanted to live in nature next to the ocean, but as we all know, it's difficult to find an affordable place to live over there. So I discovered the mobile home parks and fell in love with Tahitian Terrace, the community, the people, everything about it. So my story's a little crazy. I closed escrow on January 6th, 2025, and it burned down the next day.
Wow.
I fell in love with everybody in the community. So I had befriended, the artists, the teachers, the public workers. I was there the morning of the fire, signing all the paperwork, getting the keys, and then came out of the clubhouse and saw the plume of smoke coming over the bluffs, and just my heart sank. I called my insurance guy. I'm like, am I insured? And then proceeded to stay at the property for several hours. And we have a firefighter that lived there.
Wait. What did he answer? Were you insured?
Yes, I was, but underinsured, as you probably all are.
Yeah.
But thankfully insured by the California Fair Plan. Helped a little bit. So I watched the whole day unfold, and was there with the firefighter, and he was undoing the hose. He had a deregulated fire hose because he is an active firefighter. And the whole community came together, and people started to pack up their cars and leave. And I mean, I was in shock. I got out, they were saying evacuate now. It was unbelievable. Everybody's story is unique, but it was just like, I couldn't believe this was happening. So yeah, and I went to a friend's house in Santa Monica and fell asleep on her couch for hours because I was traumatized. I don't remember anything that afternoon. And then woke up and was watching the fire app, every hour. And finally the next day saw that the park was gone. The fire had come down. The park is situated on the corner of Temescal Canyon and the PCH. So the fire eventually, early evening, came down to Mescal Canyon and started going up the hill, and that's how it entered the park. And it also was on the north side of the park and entered that way. So yeah, that was the day for me. Yeah, Crazy story. So I'm a documentarian. So the only thing I knew to pick up my camera, which is why I started this project. And we just watched the trailer I went back to the burn area the week after and was interviewing all my neighbors that were sifting through their properties and just collectively capturing the story of the moment. And like you said earlier, it's a story that nobody really knows about the community down the hill from the affluent neighborhoods of the Palisades. You know, this beautiful, beloved community, diverse community of people that, found a way to live in nature and in the Palisades that we all love in a way that they could afford. And so we're fighting, and Abby can tell more of the story. We're fighting to come back because mobile home parks don't fall under the same protections and fall under the same programs of recovery. So it's a complicated, challenging road. And the biggest part of the story is we own the homes, we own the manufactured homes, the mobile homes, but we don't own the land underneath us. So we're beholden to the ownership group of the property of Tahitian Terrace to invite us back to rebuild. And the communication has been lacking, to say the least. So we're fighting to come back.
I'm going to ask you some questions about that in a bit, but let's hear Abby's experience as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Every time I think about this, I just think this is like a scene from a terrible movie. So as I mentioned, my parents had both lived in Tahitian Terrace, for about 20 years, and I had been back and forth between places. So I moved all my belongings back to my mom's house a few months before the fire and was on a flight home because my sister had called and said, "Hey, you need to get back to LA now." My dad was in the intensive care unit at a hospital in pretty bad shape. And she was like, "Time is now. You got to get here." So I booked a last minute flight that left on the morning of January 7th. And I got a few missed calls on my way to the airport. Turns out they were the mandatory evacuation order phone calls. So I called my mom and I said, "There's a mandatory evacuation order." And I was prepared to say, "And here's what I need you to grab." And she said, "Hey, I'm at the hospital with your dad." I grabbed, and she grabbed 3 bars of chocolate, our passports, and a family tree photo that she had made off the wall. And that was it. But the funniest thing, I'm like, "Chocolate? What were you thinking?" And she's like, "I wasn't. I saw the big cloud of smoke outside. I thought, it's going to be annoying to try to come home later. They're never going to let this fire burn all the way to where we are. It's far enough away, but the traffic is miserable. Getting out of the mobile home park can be dangerous because it's a left-hand turn onto PCH that can get backed up." So she grabbed a few things and left. And I got on my plane and I talked to a friend who tracks fires professionally and said, "Hey, Riley, this is my address. Are we in danger?" And he said, "The winds don't look good, but they're not in that direction right now." So halfway through the flight, I look at the seat in front of me and someone is watching the news on their computer. And it says, "Palisades fire, 300 acres to 3,000 acres. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like on this flight processing, maybe losing my dad. And then seeing that this fire has totally exploded, I turn on my internet on my phone and text my mom, and she just responds, "Everything is gone." And it was like, are you kidding me? I'm on a plane flight going home to this situation and everything just burned to the ground. I mean, it was horrifying. My dad's 83, my mom's 76, and this was not in their end of life plan to be displaced. And as Chris mentioned, because we own the home and not the land underneath it, it's a really, really tricky situation. And we were all wildly underinsured because insurance companies and tend to value mobile homes on the national average of mobile home value, which means that we could be in the middle of anywhere of the country, and that's what our mobile home is considered the value for. Granted, we had an incredible ocean view. If you can see the picture behind me, that was the view from my mom's patio. My dad had a similar view. Absolute heaven. We didn't wake up one morning without looking out and thinking, we are the luckiest people. I mean, we had the best view of the Palisades, I have to be honest. I don't know how many other people in the Palisades even had that direct of an ocean view. So anyways, to round out the story, my mom picked me up from the airport in her car with the clothes on her back. And it was like, where do we go? Crazy day.
Wow, that's just incredible. All right, so let's just get into the history of Tahitian Terrace. Now, if you've driven along PCH, you've probably seen Tahitian Terrace. There's also another area people call the Bowl. That's a separate property, isn't it? It's a separate mobile home park.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually the adjacent property. Sadly, the debris's not been cleaned up in that park yet. We were fortunate. We had to fight for the debris to get cleaned up, and advocate with FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers because the property's actually classified as a commercial property. And they weren't going to be cleaning the commercial properties, but the bowl is just next door. And there's actually a third mobile home park in the Palisades called Malibu Village. So there's 3 parks like ours. Ours is 19 acres and had 155 households. So quite a large community.
All right, so this is one of the things I think is really important to know. And there's been a lot of debate about affordable housing and people talking about how they don't want to see affordable housing in Pacific Palisades. And one of the points that I've often made is, well, for people who had already paid off their homes, retirees who moved in the 50s and 60s, they weren't paying a mortgage, they were just paying their property taxes and other expenses. Those were affordable homes. But Tahitian Terrace and the other mobile home parks add a whole new dimension to that because you had affordable housing in Pacific Palisades. And if anybody wants to create affordable housing that everybody else is okay with, all you have to do is bring the residents of Tahitian Terrace back to their homes. And it won't even be hard to rebuild those homes because these are largely mobile homes. They can be made in a prefab facility. We've interviewed manufacturers on this podcast who can do that sort of thing. That's the point to me of this whole dilemma, and it's the sad part as well. But these were affordable homes. And as you point out, for people who just wanted to live the dream, who didn't have millions of dollars available, but who could afford a more modest home, it was one of the last communities by the beach for working class, middle class people. And for some reason, there's no urgency behind this.
Yeah, and I think I just want to give people an idea of what a mobile home is, because sometimes there's some confusion on, is that an RV? Why didn't you just drive your home out? And these are homes that look like they're not tiny homes, but they look like small homes. It's a double wide trailer, and it doesn't look anything like a trailer. It truly looks like a small house. There's no way that you can just stick it on a truck and drive it out in a situation like this. A lot of us had decks, et cetera. But I will just comment quickly on the affordable housing note. My father was a lawyer. My mom was a school nurse. Many of our neighbors were either in education or art or also retired on fixed income sometimes. And that made it a very tight-knit community. It's interesting. We've heard in some spaces that it's been hard for schools and hospitals and other businesses to hire workers because they're not able to afford to live in the spaces where they need to be employed. And I think that was something that was really special about Tahitian Terrace and the mobile home parks in this community it's the people that you see in your community, living in your community, working at your schools, working at your hospitals. The other note on affordable housing is, you're right. Part of our fight to come back has been, we are displaced, and we are the most at-risk residents of being permanently displaced by this fire. And it's a fire that I'm sure you've had many people on your podcast talk about, was not just an extreme weather event. It happened because of the failure of many different departments that we employ to keep us safe and to do their job, and they didn't. And the idea that we could be permanently displaced and not allowed to go back to our homes because of something that was clearly the fault of others it makes it even harder. And so right now we are completely beholden to the landowners. They will be able to decide if and when we can come back. Luckily, there are enough stipulations that will make it very difficult to change the zoning of the mobile home park to anything else. And so that is one small protection that we are hoping will stay in place. As you mentioned, we're 12 months out from the fire. Many people have been able to make decisions on, are we going to rebuild? Are we going to go home? Or are we not? Are we going to sell our land? We don't have land to sell. And we also don't get to make the choice on if we come back or not. And we've received very little communication from the landowners about if and when they will know that they're rebuilding or that we're coming back. So I'll let Chris add to that.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge because we have a very motivated community. We're very organized. We formed an HOA. We have been in touch with Habitat for Humanity. There are other organizations that are ready to step in and help us out. But because of our designation as a commercial property, because the ownership group, frankly, isn't collaborating with the residents, there's a disconnect because we know we'd be stronger together. And, you know, the systems that are in place, like the mortgage subsidy, the 3-month subsidy, we can't even enjoy because you have to have a permanent foundation. For some reason, whoever created that didn't think it through and feel like manufactured homes or mobile homes should participate. I certainly have a mortgage now that I could use that 3-month subsidy. But yeah, we're looking, you know, to figure out how to participate in resources, financing, the whole conversation around affordable housing and the Newsom $107 million affordable housing development initiative. We can't participate in that because those buildings are supposed to be built in the non-burn areas and they're new developments. So the people that want to come back, like the folks in our community that have been displaced because we all lived there pre-fire, we can't even, you know, participate in these programs when we would certainly check the box of fulfilling low to moderate income housing and traditional manufactured homes, rent controlled for that population. The multi-unit housing population of the Palisades is 30%. And today, actually, the city council passed the permit waivers for the fire survivors, and that did include multi-unit housing. So it was a small win, actually. But we're, again, 30% of the population that is struggling to return because we fall outside of the traditional systems that single-family homes can, you know, participate in.
I mean, Chris, you bring up a really good point, and Joel's mentioned it ad nauseum on the podcast, which is these mobile homes really are affordable housing. You don't need to like have a big imagination to understand that your community and the two others check the boxes on affordable housing, and it's not a big stretch. By the way, I always thought that the entire event actually checks the boxes for homelessness as well, because we're all homeless, you know, by any definition. If you just make a little bit of a stretch. And Oren already mentioned the amazing use of funds that is happening right now with the billions of dollars going to homeless programs and $232 million going to however many dozens of people that Oren mentioned. I always thought that it doesn't take a big stretch. If you want to get a big win from a political angle, like divert some of those funds to, homeless people in the communities in Palisades and Malibu. And I think we check the boxes there as well, by the way. So you make a very good point, and I just wanted to know before we continue the conversation, where do things stand from a legal perspective with the landowners? Can you give us a little bit of the color on what's happening there in terms of like who owns the land, where do things stand, what do they want to do with it, where do things stand with the community?
Well, I could quickly say we've received about 4 emails in the last year from the ownership group that have been pretty neutral, saying, and they always end with, it will take several years to come back, and there's no commitment. So we've extended our hand to be collaborative. We have actually put in a letter of intent to purchase the property and become a resident-owned community, similar to Malibu Village, one of the other mobile home properties. They have not wanted to work with us. We're not really sure what's going on. We have retained a top law firm. And because of our lawyers, they're communicating with us. So it's putting a little bit of pressure to communicate with us. We do have other protections like the mobile home residency laws and the Mellow Act, which protects affordable housing in coastal areas. Sadly, SB, I think it was 749, didn't pass a couple of months ago. I think that was complicated by, again, the idea of affordable housing, even though it really was specific to the mobile home residents having the right to return if the park owner didn't wanted to sell. So there's some protections. We're in legal conversations, but at the end of the day, we don't have a path forward. We are all displaced. We've had to relocate. We have SBA loans that are going to run out. We've got extensions. We're able to participate in some of the things that the government's offering us, but without a path forward, we can't order our homes. And we could be a great success story because it would take 3 months to build a home and have it delivered. So the only thing stopping us from returning would be the replacement of the utilities. And there's already a work order in for that. I've been able to find that out on my own. And, once the utilities are back on that property, again, it's just designing the mobile home, paying for it. And, they're not cheap, but they're not super expensive. And it's a path forward to returning home. But without the collaboration of the ownership group, we're just like in a holding pattern.
Is the ownership group holding? Is it a valuation issue, like where the ownership group seeks a different zone for that property so they could sell it for a higher price, or is it something else that is the whole? Or you just don't know? Is it a matter of like, is it a matter of do they want to sell the land for other purposes, or where do things stand in terms of like why have they taken this position or no position to date?
Debbie,
it's been sure, and please jump in if you have anything to add. But it's been pretty clear that it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to change the zoning of the land, and so it would be highly improbable that would be the route that they would go for, because it would take years, and no one really wants that to happen. Plus, the land has been deemed in the past too unstable for any sort of like commercial property. It really is best situated as a mobile home park, single story structures. You would have noticed in the Bowl, which is next door, they were allowed to have 2-story structures. Our land was not stable enough to allow that. And so there are many reasons as to why it should remain a mobile home park, and why it almost certainly will remain a mobile home park. We don't have a lot of detail as to what they're waiting for. There is speculation that they are looking for other buyers. So that would lead to a consideration, maybe that's a valuation gap. But again, our letter was an intent to purchase, which gave a range, which would allow for discussion and negotiation. And there was no interest in having those conversations with the residents. As Chris mentioned, SB 749, if passed, would have given mobile home park owners 12 months to decide if they would rebuild or not. And if they weren't going to rebuild, they would have been required to allow us to give the first offer as a HRA or as residents. And we're really disappointed that did not happen, because as Chris mentioned, a lot of us are out of our alternative living expenses allowances, as well as fearful that these SBA loans will expire before we can return to rebuild. So it's tricky, but it's not that tricky, right? Someone needs to invest in moving this fast. And I think the real issue right now is speed, right? So if we know it's going to return to being a mobile home park, how do you help it return to that state as quickly as possible? It doesn't matter who the owners are at the end of this. Well, it matters a little bit, but the goal is really to get that quickly. And as a landowner, you would want that because you need the income from the rent. And I think what's been interesting about our community is the self-organization that happened after the fire. I mean, it's unbelievable to see the number of committees that we have organized into. We have become fluent in all sorts of different parts of policy and government and financing and fireproofing communities and renegotiating insurance. And we are a very powerful community of people who are committed to coming back quickly. And we are excited and eager and hopeful that our knowledge will be resourceful to landowners and other Palisadians. We've been told as we join other community groups like the Palisades Recovery Commission, that when we join meetings, a lot of people learn a lot of things. And it's because, we are kind of the, so to speak, underdogs in a situation. And that means you really have to know your information backwards, forwards, and sideways so that you can go and work the system from a variety of different angles to try to get it to work for you. And so I would say that, again, we've become an incredibly resourceful group. We have a lot to offer to the entire community, but also to the landowners.
Sorry, before I throw it back to Joel, just one more question. What kind of reception have you received on the political front? Like, who's helping out who's been a good voice. Can you give us a little bit of information on like what's been done so far and who's like kind of fronting this effort on the political front?
Well, I would say that Tracy Park has been a phenomenal advocate for our communities, and everyone in her office. I have shorthand with some of the people she works with. I call them very frequently to clean up that Palisades Bowl. I'm very vocal about that toxic waste site across the street from the ocean. Tracy Park's office has been great. I might have to stop there. Abby, is there anybody else that you feel we've gotten support from? Because we honestly haven't gotten support from a lot of other government officials.
No, really none others that I'm aware of. And I think that's why we're so grateful to be on this podcast today. As Chris mentioned, 30% of the Palisades is multi-unit family housing, and obviously a portion of that are the mobile home parks. And it's just such a uniquely interesting situation to me navigating. And I think a lot of government looks at the Palisades at the majority of residents, and 30% isn't the majority, but it's also not a tiny minority. So we're very eager to collaborate with anyone who is willing to help us get back.
Was SB 749 written by Ben Allen?
Ben Allen.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And he's been an advocate, but it's sad that didn't pass. We heard that the McDonald's, or the family that owns the property, had a very strong lobbyist in Sacramento when that was on the floor. So.
Along with many other mobile home parks.
Yeah, I see that a lot of the Mobile Home Parks Association opposed it. Also, the California Association of Realtors opposed it. So, what kind of help are you guys getting? Because let's say, okay, the owner of the land, you know what? End of the day, it's their business. They owned it. They're not doing anything illegally. But like, I think your only way to get some help can be either like Ron suggested. There is like a lot of money for homelesses in California, like a lot. And I don't know if somebody wakes up in the in the city. Are you guys, by the way, city or county?
We're city.
Your city.
It's
So if somebody
same as the Palisades.
Okay, so if somebody takes some of the money that they're supposed to move toward the homelesses, and I don't know, like do some sort of a deal with the owners that it will make them easy to run quicker. I see like so many opportunities and so many people that can help, and again, nobody is helping.
This is such an obvious one because it's such. By the way, like even from a political standpoint, I don't care who's going to gain from it politically, but from a political standpoint, it's a total home run to do this. Like step in, front the effort, find the money. There's money there that's going to completely useless things. Like
there is not a lot of money, Ron. It doesn't need even a lot of money, like something like this.
I know, like, and there's no other use cases. Like from a political standpoint, like this is a total home run. By the way, something that like the federal government could step in on and like go at Trump speed on. It's something like this. It's like a big project, 155 homes. And right. I know there's like a lot of like legislation and things in the way and private property and all those things. But at the same time, everything is complicated in this rebuild. We're all going at this one house at a time. But here's a community that's been displaced. It's an obvious home run. Everybody, all your neighbors want to have this community back because it's a great community. We all know it. And this is like to me, Joel, it's a home run. Why is it not happening? Joel,
this is a perfect example. Sorry, Joel. Let me just jump in for a second. This is the perfect example of what's happening in California. Why we are in deficit. Why we're paying like so much high taxes, and why like small things like this. We're not asking now to rebuild 10,000 houses. We're talking about like affordable housing in the Palisade. People that are ready to move, and nobody like would come and help them. It's. Okay, Joe, sorry.
Well,
I had to blow some steam.
First of all, as in many states, when you talk about people in lower income brackets, generally, even if the mobile homes in Palisades might be a more affluent area than other mobile homes. But when you talk about people in lower income brackets, they just get less attention from politicians and policymakers if they don't represent a lot of votes. So there are some situations where you help a small group of people and they represent a larger group of people, so you want to help that small group, and you get photographed helping them, nice articles in the paper, and then you make the pitch to the larger, broader group of people. But it turns out there aren't that many mobile home residents in this part of LA County, so they're not representative of a much larger group of voters. And it turns out the mobile home residents are actually only a small group of the broader Palisades population, and people who have more connections and more money are going to get more attention because that's what politicians respond to, and even the best.
So listen to this, Joe. Listen to this: 464,778 spaces in California for mobile homes. This is a lot of power. I don't know how Chris.
It's a lot of people, but here's the problem. Statewide, that's 1/60th of the population. That's less than 2% of the population. So you're talking very small numbers of people. Secondly, they're spread out all over the state. It's easier to get attention if you're in one area, concentrated in one area, because then you'll have a member of Congress from a district, let's say, take a special interest, or a state representative. And I think it's unfortunate, but that's why these communities fall through the cracks. And I think even before the fire, people would drive by and say, gee, that's odd, there's this mobile home community in Pacific Palisades. What's it doing here? I actually know people who thought about moving in there. I know people who did move in there. And it was a very nice community. The homes were very nice, clean, some beautiful decks, beautiful windows. People took care of their homes. It defied the stereotype, let's say, of a trailer park, if you want to call it that. But people allow communities like that too often to fall through the cracks. And I just think that that's a brief shorthand for a larger conversation. But again, back to your original point about the presidential race and what people pay attention to, unfortunately, in many of our political debates, we don't reward performance. We reward outrage. And that's one of the reasons that this has not been given enough attention. But as everyone's been pointing out, it's less expensive than the big fixes you need in other areas. And it is affordable housing for people. And I guess you just need the right kind of intervention. You need the right people to pay attention. It's complicated by the fact of private ownership. And as I've been told the story, the owners of Tahitian Terrace, I mean, the communication hasn't been good to residents, but they're not even communicating to each other very well. I don't know if I've got that right, Abby, but essentially that was also part of the problem. But it's hard. Look, the community is very organized and the community is very coordinated, and they showed up in large numbers at the protest on January 7th, which is how I met them. So they're getting a platform here, and hopefully people watching and listening will do something about it. But we really do need to do something about it, not because of some abstract principle of affordable housing, which is important, but also because they're our neighbors and our friends, and it's
Correct.
really important that we help each other.
Correct. And by the way, like typically, like the whole affordable housing and high density housing argument is entirely different. You have like existing communities. Somebody wants to build something, and they want to bring in a whole bunch of new people to a new community that wasn't there before. This is a totally different case. These people were our neighbors. They were living in affordable communities. Nobody wants to, this is like nobody wants, like, I don't know, maybe you guys would tell me different, but like I don't think there's any objection to the communities being rebuilt from the communities themselves. This is a complete home run, total win for everybody if this gets done fast and even gets funded by the powers that be. Like, are you guys facing resistance from outside, from within the community about rebuilding?
Well, sorry, Chris, do you want to answer that or?
No, go ahead.
Great. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. And I want to say, no, we're not experiencing resistance, although we are experiencing perhaps deprioritization or not really being given the same amount of space and resources as other neighborhoods or members of the community. And this is even by nonprofits and others that's mission is to support the return. And so, again, I think we've had to scream a little louder, fight a little bit harder to get into these spaces. And then, as I mentioned earlier, once we are, it's like, oh, wow, you are a real resource to this community. And so, I think, but I do want to go back to your earlier question of, what do you need to come back? And I think part of it is, yeah, we need to be heard and we need to be part of the discussions on how anyone is going to come back to the Palisades. I think one of the most motivating things I saw was one of the visions of what the entire community wants to see of the Palisades, in the future. If we look, in the future, if we look back, what do we want to say happened? And one of the lines was to make sure that all residents who want to return can return. And again, we are the most at risk of being permanently displaced if we're not allowed to come back. And I did want to touch on the other part of your earlier question of, what do we need to get back? And I would say we includes us and the landowners. It is going to take a lot of capital to make that park livable again. And so if we had access to low interest loans for the landowners and the residents, if we had access to grants, which again, we have been excluded from because of the commercial zoning that we're in. And then there's a whole laundry list of what residents could use. Again, a lot of as Chris mentioned earlier, debris removal, mortgage relief, fire hardening grants, FEMA benefits, affordable housing funds, insurance viability. A lot of these things, multi-unit family housing has been excluded from accessing. And those are things that really as a nation, we should be focused on because these disasters happen. And we cannot let multi-unit family housing slip through the cracks of the resources that are made available to these communities. And as you mentioned many times on this podcast, the disaster profiteering that's at risk of happening. What we don't want to see is all the affordable housing money going to new developers to build new developments. How crazy is that when all of us are still displaced as the affordable housing of the Palisades? And so again, I think there are a number of things we could do. This is not rocket science by any stretch of the imagination, but if we are not included in these conversations, no one knows about the ways that we have been excluded because we're not there to let them know. And so again, there's just a real desire of this community to have a seat at the table. And again, we are getting more seats at the table because again, I think people are saying, oh, whoa, these people over there, they've done their work. What do they have to say? Let's get together and get home. That's what we all want for all of us.
And guys, you guys do have power. You have like 440, almost 500,000 lots of mobile homes in California. Let's say that this is just like around 10 million. Let's say it's 1 million people in California. Last time for governor, there was like 10 million people that voted. I think that, and it's something that shouldn't be like that hard to like, gather. And I'm not saying create another union in California. We have a lot of them over here.
We have enough of them.
Yeah, we have enough of them over here. But like, you guys have power. I think that if somebody like Steve Hilton that was here last week can, try and talk to a lot of you guys. You guys have a lot of voting power, and you should use your voting power because it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that we have like so much money for homelessness, for this, for that, for like I just told you like $223 million went for 22 people. I just gave another example of $16 million, $80 million, sorry, that went for 50 people. And there is like so much of these things that are happening in California. You guys should all like get together. You have a lot of power in the next elections. And you guys should like find somebody that will really want to help you, figure out how we can help you, and like gather like I don't know, you can probably gather a few 100,000 people. Don't forget that like the union of the teachers, which is the biggest union over here in California, is only 125,000 units people. So I think that's what you have to do in order to get some help over here.
We're very very motivated. I mean, we're very organized. We are fighting for a seat at the table. We were talking about housing authorities and climate resilient opportunities. We're really looking at everything to figure out how to participate in some of the funding. I know Caruso was going to set up a meeting with the ownership group, and that didn't happen. But I do believe he's supportive. So there's local people that are interested, and the head of the HOA actually did meet with Gavin Newsom, and we're on the radar. It's just the mechanisms for the funding need to be established to funnel it into our community, to help rebuild, the roads, to build a community, community house. We would just like a path forward. We would like the owners to be more collaborative with us. And hopefully, in the next couple of months, we'll know more. And we all want to work together. It's a non-denominational, non-partisan kind of effort. Whoever wants to come and be the hero, we're ready to work together.
Well, I think we're together.
It just requires. Sorry, go ahead, Abby.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think it's communication, and we're better together. We're stronger together, right? Like, we need to understand the risks of anything that is proposed. And when we all speak to each other, we can understand, hey, I was in a meeting last week with someone from Mac Ventures who was talking about, we don't have consensus making in our org. When we make investments, we want to hear, what are the disagreements? We need to go into these investments and these deals with eyes wide open, and we also need to trust each other. So if you don't agree with the deal, at least you know all the risks. I trust you to go mitigate those risks. And so again, I think, as Chris was mentioning, we need an avenue for funding to reach our community, whether that's climate resilient districts or housing authorities, or I don't care who, figures that out, but there needs to be, it can't just be, hey, here's money, go use it. We all know that doesn't work. It disappears. Who knows what happens to it? But if there is accountability and avenues and pathways to say, when this money gets released, it goes here and it goes there, and we follow it all the way through. Again, I don't know. I'm hopeful for that. And I'm hopeful that this is the type of issue that can really bring us together, because we have the same motivation, which is to go home.
It just requires a little bit of imagination. That's all it does. And then and the money's there. It's just in other things that people are either using as troughs for fraud or other things, more nefarious things. But it just requires...
Just find a way to do a fraud and take the money. That's how everybody does in California, guys.
Well, wasn't that what Fire Aid was? I mean, I don't know if you've talked about that yet.
How about a little bit of imagination? How about this? Here's a crazy idea. Why don't we make that community the Olympic Village for the Olympics? What an incredible showcase for California that would be, right on the Pacific Ocean. My mother-in-law was in the Olympics. She tells me about this concept of an Olympic Village, which, by the way, looks a little bit like that. It looks like a bunch of trailers. And why don't we build the Olympic Village there and then release the housing to the community after?
What's funny is I actually used to do strategy for Nike's Innovation Org, and we run in Olympic cycles. That's how the organization runs. And there's been a lot of creative things people have thought about using that land for. And it's obviously the most prime property of the Palisades, but we welcome any fast path to get back.
Totally.
It's an idea, Olympic Village. It's pretty cool. I used to joke and say they're going to waste the money on the Olympic Village instead of building housing in the Palisades, but maybe this could actually kill two birds with one stone. But I love, Abby, that you say you want to have a mechanism for making sure the money's spent properly and controlling it. That's been my idea since last January. We need a special master to oversee the funding and then let the funding come in. I mean, there's no reason the federal government can't let billions of dollars flow into the rebuild effort as long as we know the money is going to be spent properly. And I think taxpayers have the right to know when they're not putting good money after bad. I want to just round out this great discussion by sharing a video, which is my video of the community when it was destroyed. And I saw this community as I came in. There it is. So that was my first glimpse of the fire on January 8th, the day after. And I can see Chris shaking her head. I mean, that was one of the first things I filmed, actually, in Palisades. And then I spent the next several weeks doing nothing but filming and photographing in Palisades and helping people identify their lots. But I went into Tahitian Terrace because there was this wall of smoke between Tahitian Terrace and Sunset Boulevard, and it was very scary, and I didn't know if I wanted to go through it. The fire was still burning, as you can see the smoke blowing over, but I know that's a familiar road to you, but that's basically what I saw while the fire was still going on.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it's all...
Yeah. Anyway, I'm hoping that the future brings better days for Tahitian Terrace and for all of us, and it's really just been an incredible privilege to have you guys on here. And Oren and Ron, I think we've figured out how to elect the next governor or state representative or whatever. I mean, you just got to do
this
the right
is
thing.
like a free. I'm not a political consultant, Joel. Okay, you know that. But here's like a free 5 to 10% polling points. Somebody take this issue. I'm serious. Like, this is like a freebie from me to you. Take this issue. Build homes quick ahead of the Olympics. You're gonna see this, like, you're gonna see yourself shoot up in the poll. It's such a no-brainer. Everybody wants it. The neighbors want it. The community wants it. The money's there. Like, it's such a homer.
Just one last question. Do you have to buy out the owners? I mean, is that a solution, or is eminent domain a solution? I mean, how do
We did put in a letter of intent to buy the property. They said they're not interested in selling at this time. So
to us, sorry, Chris, specifically to us.
Well, who are they going to sell?
We don't know if they're interested in. That's a great question. They've tried to sell the park in the past, and they have not been successful. So there's definitely, this has been, we'll see what happens. But who do they want to sell it to? I don't know, but I would love for it to be sold to us so we can all go home and control our own destinies from here on out.
If the number is right, what would they care?
Exactly. And I think really at this point it's communication. Let's just talk. You can't have a negotiation when you're not in communication.
Hang on a second. It's close enough to a transit hub, the bus stop. So maybe, Oren, we should put some money together and we should build a high rise of low income housing. Anyway,
it'll fall right into the ocean.
Yeah.
It won't stand there.
I've got to wrap this up on my end. So I want to just thank Chris Russo and Abby Waldorf. Guys, how can we find out more about what's happening? Tell us, is there a website or an address we can go to?
Well, I'd love for you to follow the Kiki Place podcast, which will be released shortly.
All right.
Where else can they find us, Abby? I'm not sure.
The YouTube channel with the video that will be played here. Yeah. Okay. We'll send it to you, Joel. Thanks.
We'll put it in the notes. And anyway, thanks to Abby and Chris again. Thanks to Oren and Ron. And thanks to you all for following Three Homeless Guys. You can follow us on YouTube, on the RSS feed at threehomelessguys.com, and email us pod@threehomelessguys.com. Until next time, from Joel, Ron, and Oren, stay strong.
Thanks for listening to Three Homeless Guys. If this episode hit home, please subscribe to our channel. Check out threehomelessguys.com for RSS feeds to your favorite streaming service. Follow us on social and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Drop us a review or shoot us a message at pod@threehomelessguys.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay strong, and we'll catch you next time.